you're watching an introduction to Windows PowerShell. And in this lesson, I will tell you, it's just that. It's an introduction into what exactly PowerShell is. Okay, so I will tell you, before we go take a look at it, PowerShell is something that is fairly new. Okay, it's not completely new. We're now on PowerShell 3.0. But it's something that the entire Windows Server 2012 operating system is built around. And we are going to see PowerShell throughout the operating system. As I'm showing you different features, we're going to see how it relates to PowerShell and how we can do things with PowerShell. Now that said, I will also tell you that PowerShell can be thought of as kind of, it's not the most technically accurate, but it's almost like the new command prompt. Okay, some people look at it that way, meaning it's a command line interface, and it can be used as a scripting engine. Okay, that's one of the really nice features about it. But if you have experience with prior versions of Windows Server operating systems, you know that in certain cases you could do one thing through scripting. We'll say through either a certain scripting language or through the command line, and you would do things slightly different, or you might have different capabilities if you were doing it through the GUI. Whereas now, the entire GUI, or graphical user interface, okay, so everything that we point and click, has been built on top of this PowerShell, which means whether you want to do it from a command line or script, or whether you do it through the GUI with a mouse, it's all the same functionality. And that's pretty cool. So with that, let's go ahead and actually see a little bit about what this PowerShell looks like. All right, so here we are out on a Windows Server 2012 computer. And just to be specific, I happen to be on one that I've created earlier in this course called NY-DC-1. But that's really not significant at this point in the sense that PowerShell exists on all Windows Server 2012 computers. So if you want to follow along with what we're doing here, you don't need to be on any particular computer. You just have to have Windows Server 2012. Now, part of the reason why you don't have to have anything specific to follow along here is because I am going to just be giving you some basic foundational information about PowerShell. PowerShell as a whole is huge. You want to become a full-blown PowerShell expert, and I would not say that that's a bad thing. Okay, so that is something that you may want to do. But if you want to become a full-on expert, there's entire courses that you can go through to help get there. What I want to accomplish here is I want to get you to where you can feel comfortable administrating a Windows Server 2012 computer. And since PowerShell is a major part of the computer, well, you have to know where it is, the basics on how to use it, and things like that. So now to get into PowerShell, one real quick and easy way is right down here on the taskbar. Okay, by default, if you haven't done anything but a basic installation of Windows Server 2012, you will find that there is a shortcut to opening up Windows PowerShell on the taskbar. Now this is customizable, so depending on what computer you're using, you may or may not see this icon. But if I click on the icon, you'll see it opens up a PowerShell window. Okay, and it looks a lot like the old command prompt, right? And, as a matter of fact, we're going to look at the old command prompt in just a moment along with this. But before we do, I want to talk to you about other ways that you could get to PowerShell. Okay, one way, and I've talked to you about this in a previous lesson, is through the Server Manager. In the Server Manager, on the Tools menu, we can find Windows PowerShell. And there are some other PowerShell options, and we'll talk about them in just a little bit, specifically this PowerShell ISE. We'll come back to that. Let me go ahead and close out of the Server Manager, though, because we already have PowerShell open. I want to show you another way we can get to PowerShell, and that is through the Start screen. And so in order to get to the Start screen, you might be thinking to yourself, well, where's that Start button that used to appear in the lower left-hand corner of my desktop? This is a big question a lot of people have been asking with Windows Server 2012. They say, hey, where's the Start button? And where's my Start menu? Well, here is how you can get to, and it's now called the Start screen, not the Start menu. There's a few different options here. The first option is to go ahead and hit the Start button on my keyboard. Now, obviously, I can't show you this because you're looking at my screen, you can't see my hands on the keyboard. Maybe I'll get the microphone close and you can hear me hit the button. Okay, I hit the start button on the keyboard, and that brings me into the start screen. Another way I can get into the start screen, and let me go ahead and hit that button again to go back to the desktop. Another way I can get to the start screen would be to put my cursor in either the upper right-hand corner. You'll notice that this charms bar opens up, or I could put it in the lower right-hand corner. Okay, so either one of those corners will get me into this charms bar, and then of course there you see start, and if I click on it, it gets me back into that start screen. Or a third option that has been built into Windows Server 2012 is, since we're all pretty comfortable with finding the start button in the lower left-hand corner, you'll notice that if you put your cursor all the way down here, pretty much almost on the last, the far left lower pixel of the entire screen, I'm just hovering it. I haven't clicked on anything. You'll see that a little mini thumbnail of the start screen has appeared. And if I click my mouse button, boom, it gets me into the start screen. Now, why did I want to get to the start screen? Well, number one, you'll see here, there's Windows PowerShell. Okay, it's there by default. And again, this is all customizable, so it may or may not be there going forward, depending on how you customize and set up your start screen. But I want to show you that even if it wasn't there, I could just start typing the name of the utility that I want to look for. And so I'll tell you what, instead of looking for PowerShell, let's open up the old command prompt, right? Because that's not here by default. That's not one of the default thumbnails that appears on the start screen. Now, I could put it there. Okay, again, this is all customizable, but since it's not there, I'm going to go ahead and search for the command prompt. Now, a lot of people have asked me, why is it that the search box that used to appear on the start menu, why did they get rid of that? I mean, a lot of people think that that was like the greatest creation ever when we got into, for many people it was Windows 7 was the first time they saw that. You would just click start and boom, the cursor was already blinking in a start search box. Well, even though that box doesn't exist by default, guess what? You can still start typing just like you did before. So I'm going to hit one letter on the keyboard here. I'm going to hit the letter C. And the reason is because we're looking for the command prompt, right? So I hit the letter C, and look what happens. Automatically, a search box opens up, and I'm now searching all my applications, settings, and files for things that begin with the letter C. You'll notice there's a number of different applications here. There's 10 in particular that are listed here that all include the letter C. If I add an O to it, it narrows it down to 9, hit an M. You see where I'm going with this? I'm actually typing out the word command prompt, and I only had to get to COMM, and it shows me I only have one app called the command prompt. Now, if you happen to be very used to opening up the command prompt by typing in CMD, right, because the name of the executable that opens up the command prompt is cmd.exe, I can do that as well. If I type in CMD, just like I used to, it still finds the command prompt for me. And this would work with anything. Okay, I could go ahead and say I want to find the calculator. I could say I want to find Notepad. Heck, I could even say that I want to find PowerShell. Okay, there's pretty much any application that exists on your system. You can find it by simply hitting the start button to get you to the start screen and start typing in the name of the application you're looking for. So since the command prompt is what I'm looking for, I'm going to go ahead and type it in and then click it. And I'll tell you what, before I click it, I'm going to right click it because I want to show you that if you right click on an application, you then get what's similar to your old context sensitive drop down menu, right? We used to get a menu that would drop down when you right click. Well, you still get it. It just appears down here at the bottom of the screen so that you can do things like pinning it to the start menu or taskbar. You could run as administrator. That was a big one that we would do with the command prompt. Okay, so I'm going to actually click the right mouse button again and make that go away. And I'm just going to click the command prompt. So now I have the old command prompt, and I'm going to just kind of move this stuff around a little bit, make this a little bit smaller. Let's move this guy over as well and make him a little smaller. Now you know that I could have actually done this by just dragging all the way to the left and all the way to the right and could have tiled these for the entire window. That would have been another option. But I just want to basically show you, I want to have these two windows open side by side. Because I want to show you something. I want to show you kind of the old way versus the new way. So if we first look at the old way, okay, so we're over here in the command prompt. I'm going to type in a command, and it's a command called net start. Okay, it's just one simple command. And of course, I made my first typo of the day, and it won't be my last. And that is, it should have been net space start. My apologies. So I type in net start, hit enter, and what does it do? It shows me all the services that are running. Okay, that's what that command used to do. Pretty simple, right? Well, over here on the PowerShell side of things, well, let's type the PowerShell equivalent. And the PowerShell equivalent would be get-service, and then put in the pipe command where object, and I'll put in a bracket here. This is where it gets a little tricky. $_ dot status dash equals running. Now, if I type this all correct and don't have another typo, and you know what? I already can see that I have a typo. I did the wrong bracket. That's the bracket that I want to use. So let me go back and fix that on both sides. There we go. If I have typed it all correctly, hit enter. There you go. I get all of my services that are running. Now if I scroll back up, let's look at that line once again. Which was easier? Net start or get-service pipe where object bracket $_ dot status dash EQ, which I said equals, that's what it stands for, EQ for equals, in quotes, running. Which is easier? Well, many people will say net start is easier. And, well, from a typing perspective, it is. From a memorization perspective, it may or may not be easier. Because net start is something that I just had to know. It didn't necessarily logically make sense. It may logically make sense once I learned about it, but originally it may not have logically made sense. Whereas this does logically make sense, right? We're doing a query. We're saying get the services where the objects in that query have a status equal to running. It makes sense. So some will argue that that is more intuitive. I will also tell you that regardless of whether you thought that net start was easier or the get service command was easier, I can tell you that it's certainly more flexible. Okay, PowerShell gives you so much more capability when it comes to the capability of what it is that you're trying to script, what it is you're trying to perform, what the query is you're trying to make, what the action is you're trying to take. So much more flexible. Now, from there, let me go ahead and let's close these windows. Okay, we're going to get out of command prompt, get out of PowerShell. I'm going to show you that there is an even better PowerShell environment, especially if you are somebody who is used to the GUI, okay, used to the graphical user interface. If you're not somebody who likes to work heavily on the keyboard, if you're not somebody who likes to work from the command prompt, let's take a look at, and I'm going to come down here to the PowerShell icon, and I'm going to right-click on it, and you'll see here that I could have done PowerShell, but I also have Windows PowerShell ISE, and ISE stands for Integrated Scripting Environment. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take just a moment here, and I will tell you that the very first time you open it, it takes a little bit longer than when you go back and revisit this utility. So if you're following along and this is the first time you've been into this tool, it may not have popped up on your screen as quickly as it did for me. In this utility, we now have the ability to save ourselves some of the typing that we had to do when typing in these long commands. Okay, and technically, I will tell you, even in the standard PowerShell utility, once you get familiar with it, you'll see that you don't have to type everything in. You can use the tab key to auto-populate certain commands. But in here, using the IntelliSense technology, as I'm typing, it's going to help me. So if I type in get dash, and as soon as I type that, I don't have to go any further. You'll see here it's already showing me all the different get commands. And if I start typing in service, right, because I know it's the services that I want to get, I get as far as SERV, well, we'll even throw an I in there, and boom, look at that. We got get service already highlighted. It shows you some help that goes along with that command. I could use my arrows to scroll through the different choices here, but if get service is what I want, then I just hit the tab command and it auto-populates that for me. Then I'm going to go ahead and put in my pipe and type in where dash, and look, where object is the only choice, so I'll hit tab and put in my bracket. And we'll see, I did the right bracket this time. $, underscore, dot, status. I can hit tab, didn't have to go any further there. Dash EQ, not much to type, but it is already there. And then it's not going to help me with any of the rest of this because now I'm doing something in quotes. But I'll go ahead and put in running and my end bracket. And you'll see here that it's kind of helping guide me along. If I was a little bit unsure, if I knew mostly what I was doing but I was a little bit unsure, it's guiding me along. And if I hit enter, I can do so with a little bit more confidence that the command has been typed correctly. Now I could do some additional commands here, like I could do get dash command dash noun, and I'm kind of doing this slowly so you can see that I'm auto-populating a lot of these things. And then service. What is this going to do? Well, this is going to get me all the commands that have to do with service. And you'll see here that I can get a service, have a new service, restart a service, resume, set, start, stop, and suspend services. These are all the different things I can do with my services in PowerShell. You'll also notice that all the way to the left, when it says command type, you'll see it says commandlet. And that's a term that you should be familiar with. If you're going to be familiar with PowerShell, then you should be familiar with the term commandlet, because that's what PowerShell is made up of. It's made up of all these various commandlets that you put together to create scripts to do really powerful stuff. If I were to type in get process, look at this. Shows me all the various processes that are running on this system. Does this look like anything that you've ever seen before? If this little output here that it had on display? If you've ever worked with any Windows Server operating system in the last, I don't know, decade or longer, you may be familiar with something called the Task Manager. And this is very similar to what the Processes tab of the Task Manager looked like. You know, speaking of the Task Manager, let's go take a look at it. I'm going to right-click on my taskbar and go to my Task Manager. I want to show you, check this out. Look at how clean that is. Okay, very clean. It's just point blank showing me what most people go to the Task Manager for, which is, well, what do I have running? And it shows me Windows PowerShell ISE. That's it. That's what I have running right now. If I were to open up something else, so I'll hit start, type in the calculator. Okay, there you go. Now I have Windows Calculator and Windows PowerShell ISE, and you can still do things like you could before, right? Highlight Windows Calculator, end task, boom, it's gone. If I click on more details, however, now we get back to something a little bit closer to what we had before, right? We have a number of different tabs going on here. We have a little bit more of the clutter, but at the same time, we have a little bit more capability and power. Now, I'm not going to go into all the various details of the Task Manager because we're here to learn PowerShell, but I just thought that I would show you that we have this broken down into different types, right? We have our apps, and it shows me we have the Task Manager and the PowerShell ISE apps running. Here are some background processes. Here's our Windows processes. And just to kind of really make things look similar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the View menu and say that I don't want to group by type anymore. And I just want to show you that this is going to match very closely with what we have listed over here in our PowerShell window. That's kind of the whole point about why I'm showing you this, is that you're seeing the same thing here. Okay, and it may vary slightly because this is obviously dynamic. It's always kind of a moving target. It's always updating, but it's very close, right? We have a couple of client-server runtime processes. Here it looks like we had 3 of the CSRSSs running previously. Same thing, by the way. Here we have the Desktop Windows Manager, okay, so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff. Here's all our service hosts. All right, so let's get out of our task manager. Let's go back over to PowerShell. Let's type in another command. Okay, let's go ahead and type in get-help for process. Okay, right? We did get process. Let's get help on this. I'm going to hit enter. And if this is the very first time that you've ever typed a get help command, it's going to go ahead and ask you if you want to run the update for help to go ahead and it says right here, it says the update help commandlet downloads the newest help files for these modules. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And if you're following along, go ahead and say yes. And this might actually take a couple minutes for, again, depending on the speed of the computer and the speed of internet and everything else. So we'll take just a moment here to let this complete, and then you'll see what this get help command does. Okay, so the process has completed, and now I get the actual help that I was asking for. Down here, you will see that we have 5 choices when it comes to commands dealing with processes. We can debug, get, start, stop, or wait on a process. And if we're not sure what any of those things mean, well then over here on the right is where you will see a synopsis of what exactly that particular command is going to do. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that you have help built into PowerShell. And one last thing that I want to show you, and this is something that I want to show you if you are someone, or I really should, it's for everyone, but this is especially helpful if you are someone who is really kind of fighting the system here, and you really don't want to be at a keyboard, you want to be on your mouse, you want to point and click on things. I just want to show you that over here on the right in this PowerShell ISE, you will see that you have this Commands tab. And here we have all the various commands, okay, and it's a huge list. I mean, if I were to try to scroll through here, there's thousands of commands. And they're broken down into various modules. Okay, so you have the different modules that contain the various commands. Coming back over here, you'll even notice that when we got help, for each of these commands, it shows you what module it's a part of. Okay, so what I'm going to do is click this down, and then I'm going to start typing in serv. And actually, it went too far, but here's the Server Manager module. All right, and in this Server Manager module, I'm going to go ahead and click on Get Windows Feature. Oh, by the way, I should back up a step. Hold on, let's refresh this. I said that I was going to show you if you didn't really want to use the keyboard or not that much. I could have actually pulled this down and just scrolled alphabetically down to Server Manager. And then from there, I have Get Windows Feature. And what's really cool is from there, if I click Show Details, I can put in certain parameters. So for instance, the computer name, I can put in NYDC-1. And then down here, I can click on the Run button, and look what happens. And I know it all kind of scrolled real quickly, so let me jump back a little bit here. Scroll way back up here. I just want to show you, it typed it all in for me. Get Windows Feature, and the parameter is computer name, New York DC1. How cool is that? I didn't have to memorize anything. I have everything right here through the GUI where I can point and click. I can look at lists. I can look at choices of commands. And then I can put in parameters and just tell it to run it for me. And boom, there it is. And what did this do? Well, it showed me all the features that are on New York DC1. And you'll see that it's showing me an entire list of all these different features that are, and really this is roles and features, right? Because you can see things like Active Directory domain services. That's a role. And then there's features that are built in, and if you scroll down, eventually you'll get to not just available, but certain features that are actually installed. Now, I really want to emphasize that the point behind this lesson was not to show you specific commands. Okay, so if you're thinking, all right, great, so I learned about 4 or 5 commands, then you're looking in the wrong direction. The point was to show you the tools, because PowerShell is something that you're going to want to know where it is if you're going to administrate Windows Server 2012. Now let me close this. Let's go back to just a regular PowerShell window. I'm going to show you if I go ahead and type net start, right? Remember we did that back at the old command prompt? Look what it did. It still works. you can still do the old commands from within the PowerShell command window. How cool is that? All right, now real quick before we wrap things up, I just want to make sure to emphasize again an understanding. This operating environment was built on top of PowerShell, and what's really cool about this is in the old days, if you wanted to perform certain advanced functionality, it had to be done explicitly either through a command prompt, if there was only a command way of doing it, or only through the GUI, if there was only a GUI way or a graphical way of doing it. Whereas now, because everything is built on top of PowerShell, if you can do it from PowerShell, you can do it in the GUI, but more specifically, if you can do it in the GUI, and I'm talking pretty much anything, you name it, if you can do it in the GUI, if you can point and click, then you can also do it from the PowerShell command script, which is awesome because that means that you can script and automate pretty much anything that you're trying to do. And I will also tell you that there are certain areas of Windows Server 2012, and I think you will see more and more of these as time passes, in certain areas, within certain utilities. When you perform the function in the GUI, you will be given the option to either view and or export the actual PowerShell commands that are performing the task that you are pointing and clicking and doing. Okay, so I will show you that when we come across some of that in later lessons. But I just want to tell you that it's also a great way to easily kind of reverse engineer your way into a script. In other words, you might be thinking, I know how to do this. I know how to point and click and make something happen. Now I want to script it. Well, you might, in certain areas of the operating system, you might be able to literally just click on a button where it will show you. It will say, here's your script. Let me just hand it to you. Very, very cool stuff. And so this is basically how you work with PowerShell. And so that does bring us to the end of this lesson, where I really want to just kind of re-emphasize this was just an introduction to Windows PowerShell. And there's a lot more to know. And I will tell you, as we go through other lessons in this course, we will see PowerShell come up again and again and again. We'll see how it relates, or at least for the most part in this course, we'll see how it's interacting behind the scenes of many of the things that I'm going to teach you. So that's all I have for you in this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.